I'm Ben Ryman, and this is Behaviour Speak.
We Malaysian actually kind of united at that moment to come together that, drive for missions and visions that we want to do something for the very first time. I think this is a historical moment. It's a truly historical moment for the ABA field in Malaysia.
Sunway is not only the first, but maybe the only university potentially in Southeast Asia providing, a behavior analysis course sequence. Are you finding folks from some of these other countries wanting to come to Sunway?
Yes.
Yeah.
So recently, the first cohort, because it's the inaugural cohort, so we limited it to Malaysians only, but we do get applications, and the third cohort, which is we're accepting and starting in May this year, we are starting to accept international applicants as well. So we've got applicants from Philippines, Indonesia, and we've got Indonesian clinics sponsoring their practitioners to come to the university. Yeah.
Incredible.
It is the first master's level. So in Indonesia and Philippines, they are establishing their own training sequence.
Welcome back to Behaviour Speak. Today's episode takes us to Malaysia, where the field of applied behavior analysis is not just growing, it's being built in real time. I'm joined by Hong Chung Tan and Alexa Go, two leaders at the center of that growth. From early grassroots efforts led by parents, to the formation of a national association, to the development of Malaysia's own certification pathway for behavior analysts. This conversation is a powerful look at what it means to build a profession from the ground up. We talk about the realities of scaling ABA in a developing landscape, the importance of cultural alignment, and how collaboration, both local and global, has accelerated progress in many ways countries are still striving toward. If you're interested in global dissemination, systems building, or the future of ABA beyond North America, this is an episode you don't want to miss. Let's get into it. Alexa and Hong, welcome to Behaviour Speak.
Thanks for having us today. We are quite very excited to be in this show as well. So yeah, we are looking forward.
That's awesome.
Hi, Ben.
That's awesome.
Thank you for having us. This is Alexa here.
Stoked. Yeah, this will be fun. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge I am producing this podcast in the territories of the Klamath, Homoko, Comox, and Sechelt First Nations. As always, I'm grateful to be here. So let's start by just learning a little bit more about the two of you. Hong, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you work, and kind of what you do in the ABA space?
Oh, my name is Hong. I'm the founder of an engaged behavioral clinic that based in Abu Dhabi. We provide multidisciplinary services such as OT, ABA, speech, home-based, and also the clinical base as well. I was the founding president of Malaysia Associations for Behaviour Analysis.
All right, Alexa. Yeah.
Hi, Ben. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here, Ben. So my name is Alexa, and I'm a BCBA in Malaysia. I'm currently in academia, so I just joined Sunway University as one of their lecturer for the Masters of Applied Behaviour Analysis program, which is the first in Southeast Asia.
Wow.
But prior to this, I've been a practitioner, ABA practitioner for the past 10, 11 years, starting off as an RBT. So I used to work hands-on with children, and then I got trained and became a supervisor, eventually gotten certification in year 2018. In the past few years, I've actually been more involved in managing a private clinic in Malaysia. And also doing a lot of dissemination work, like disseminating ABA, training teachers, training schools, training the community about ABA. And also in the past 2 years, I've gotten the opportunity to, I was the president of, the second president after Hong, for the Malaysia Association for Behaviour Analysis, MABA. Yeah, so that's where we are today.
Right on. And so, Alexa, how'd you find ABA in the first place? How'd you get into the field? Why'd you decide to become an RBT?
Well, I would say that when I did my psychology degree in Australia, so that was the first time I've actually heard about ABA therapy, right? for the lack of better word, applications of ABA in early intervention for autism. That was my first encounter, and it was a college mate who told me that she's doing a part-time job working with this kid using ABA. But at that time, I think very similar to a lot of psychology degree graduates in Malaysia, after getting a degree, we're kind of like, well, I want to pursue clinical psychology and become a psychologist, but I want more practical experience. And one of the things in Malaysia that's very common is for psychology degree holders to go into this space, right? This special education / ABA therapy space. So my first job actually was not, I was very much into research. So my first job was in Singapore doing research. But then, I'm like, okay, I need to get some clinical experience. So I came back to Malaysia and I got in touch with Xian, who is the founder of the clinic that I worked with for the past 11 years. And that's when and she trained us, me and my colleagues, and that's when I realized the power of ABA.
Do you have a certification with the International Behaviour Analysis Organization, the Qualified Applied Behaviour Analysis Credentialing Board, the Behaviour Analyst Certification Board, or are certified through your region's Behavior Analyst Credentialing Board? You can earn continuing education units for this episode by going to www.behaviorspeak.com and clicking on CEUs. First secret word is Sunway, Sunway.
Power of behavioral science and changing people's quality of life. And from then on, I totally abandoned my dream of becoming a clinical psychologist and stayed. Yeah.
Right on. And how about you, Hong? How'd you find ABA?
Well, yes, I'm a little bit similar to Alex. Ever since high school, I've been always wanted to understand why, how behavior works and why people behave the way how they behave, And I've been searching the pathway on how to really be able to understand human behavior and how to actually make a change of behavior, making behavior change in the real life. So I thought being a psychologist was the first step to that. Let's dive into the psychology because that was a study of understanding mind and behavior and all this. So until when I did my undergraduate degree in psychology in Bangor University back in 2012. I had the opportunity to select one of our elective modules, which is Introductions to Behavioral Analysis. And it was taught by Dr. Carl Hughes and Dr. Maggie Hogger as well. So I thought, wow, ever since, through the elective modules, I thought like, I really be able to see this is the straightforward applications of the science, and we get to see a real change and real results, and not just about research and study about behavior, but then it's a real application to see a behavior change in real life. So that moment, it triggers that this is it, but this is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. And I really want to study more about it. And I'm so excited to see what I can do from there. So then right after that, I went to a postgraduate master in the same university. So I've studied that. And then after that, when I graduate, I actually work as a part-time behavioral researcher with Wheel Center for Behavior Change back then in Bangor University. And then after that, I came back to Malaysia, and that's where I tried to explore what are the ways for me to be able to apply. Because in the end of the day, knowing the theoretical stuff, knowing the research and the concepts doesn't mean that you know how to apply fluently. So I tried to see what ways can I do that, and I realized that actually the fastest way to apply this is in the special educations and autism services. So that's where I actually went in to the Malaysia market and tried to see how I can apply that. But back in 2015, 16, the market here was very, very small. And I had the opportunity to actually go to the Middle East, which is in Dubai. So I work under Dr. Carbon Clinic for the interventions, the early interventions, and that's where I began my journey learning how to apply the behavior analysis in day-to-day settings and also the interventions as well. And that's where I grew to become a supervisor and I worked as a consultant after that. And, ultimately started on my own clinical service because I would really want to see a huge impact and the impact that we can do for our community.
Okay, so training was in your graduate training was the Bangor University. That's in Wales, right?
Yes, in North
Yeah,
Wales.
yeah, amazing. And then you got to kind of hone your experience at the Carbone Clinic, and Vince Carbone, big name in the field, so some really good training there. Alexa, tell me again where you did your graduate studies and sort of kind of really started developing your skills in ABA.
Yeah, so all my experience were in Malaysia, and I did an online coursework with Florida Institute of Technology, FIT. I was really inspired by Dr. Jose Martinez Diaz,
Of course,
the late Dr. Jose Martinez
Yes.
Diaz, and I really enjoyed his lectures, and that was really inspiring too. And I think his lectures have really influenced the way I speak about and I train people about applied behavior analysis, like through storytelling and through really honing like whatever procedures that we want to do to the applications and real applications, and really centering around behavior changes, real behavior changes for the clients. So yeah, that's what I got my training from FIT.
Amazing. Jose's legacy is spread across the world. So, Hong, you kind of hands-on, feet on the ground, boots on the ground kind of work in Carbone Clinic. What about you, Alexa? You did everything in Malaysia. So where did you get to kind of do the hands-on work?
In the private clinic. So in Malaysia, I think at that time, I came back around 2015. 2016 was when I got my RBT. And I work at a clinic where it's one of the first clinic in Malaysia that require all of the employees to be certified. So if you're supervisory level, BCBAs, BCABAs. If you're therapy level, then it's RBT. So this is one of the clinics who require that. And it's being established by one of the first BCBAs. Her name is Gan Hui Xian. She's currently based in Australia now. So I think that really shaped like some of the landscapes of how ABA is being practiced, and the awareness of ethical conducts and certification. So so it was all under her supervision, and my studies was also sponsored by the company. That's the way to encourage proper training, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't go overseas, but I was practicing and studying at the same time. Yeah, pretty much.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And then Hong, you've got the clinic in the UAE, in the Middle East. Did you also do? You're a founding president of MABA. So have you worked in Malaysia as well?
I didn't specifically work in Malaysia. I did actually went to a few centers when I came back in 2015, and I graduated from Bangor University. Back then, I had the opportunity trained by my mentor, Bethlehem Williams, where she actually introduced ABA to me and how can ABA being applied in many different fields. So when I came back to Malaysia, the first thing I was looking at, how can I apply this in this studies? And back then there was a few centers like what Alexa was saying. So I was trying out my my experience to see what it looks like in terms of ABA landscape. Back then, yes, it was quite limited. I actually met CN as well back in 2016. So we talk about how the ABA landscape looks like right now, and we realized that there's a lot of work needs to be done, and that's where the time where I realized that we are very limited at this point of time. I see what I can do to learn more from outside, and eventually, if I can bring in whatever I learned from outside world to Malaysia and develop things here, I think that was the goal. So that's why I started out looking for opportunity to go elsewhere where I can actually learn more and bring it back. Yeah, so that was the intention.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if there's not a lot happening in the country, you've got to get the information from somewhere and get those skills and kind of bring them back. So that's awesome. So tell me a little bit bit more. It might be interesting, I think, maybe down the road to bring on that first behavior analyst in the country and really get that perspective. But tell me a little bit about, I want to hear about MABA soon, but tell me a little bit about sort of the history of ABA. When did it really kind of start in Malaysia and a bit of that progression?
Yeah, I think this goes back to end of 2016 and early 2017. I think when I came back, there was like three of the BCBAs here. Basically, Xian, Ling, one of the first. She's actually the first BCBA here, and and three of us like, hey, let's meet out, talk about ABA, just purely about ABA. And so we went to a cafe. We talked about what is the current landscape, what are the challenges, what should we do, and all this. So we discussed about those factors, and I was thinking like, hey, wait a minute. I think I've seen more interest from the local practitioners to get certified, and with the encouragement from my two colleagues, Ian and Ling, talking about trying to disseminate the science of ABA within the local practice here. I was like, wow, good. And I foresee, like, I came to know about Nexa as well. And I've seen there's more interest in terms of signing up to become certifications and working their way up to the, BCBA levels. And I mentioned that in the next 5 years, I project that I foresee that we might see a huge growth of, professions in this field. And in the next few years, we might even have to start thinking about, do we want to hold our first conference in Malaysia? Do we want to build an associations for representing the community here and build up the developments of the science? And that kind of brings forward to end of 2019, December 2019 and early 2020. That's where the announcement came from the BACB and for the transitions. So, and I went back to them and say, hey, remember we talked about this association thing, this is the right time and the right moment to do this, man. Let's call for a roundtable and get the certified people and let's sit at the table and see what we can do as associations and develop, what we need to do here. So then we call for a roundtable and we had like 12 founding practitioners and founding, Alexa is one of the founding members as well, who attended the meeting.
I love to tell this. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, go ahead. I love to tell that story. Like I always like to tell the story about our first meeting. So because Hong, is from overseas, right? And we had to get that meeting started pretty quickly. I just remember it was in January, and it was kind of like it was not an emergency meeting, but it was more of like we had to get the meeting up in a few weeks' time because to catch Hong in Malaysia. And it was during, if I remember correctly, it was during Chinese New Year. So Chinese New Year is kind of like a big thing in Malaysia. It's like a festive season. And we kind of have to, because it's celebratory and a lot of people are not away, and then we kind of have to do it like after work hour. I remember it was in the evening, it was raining, and everybody had to get to a place together. And, we got a space at the clinic that I was working in. And then the 12 of us just sat there at the round table, really tired after a long day of work and, brainstorming, where should we move forward. So I always just like to tell that story. And I just remember, and it was our first time meeting. Like, I think prior to that, we've met like online here and there, like all the practitioners, even though those who are in Malaysia, we rarely have the opportunity to actually sit everybody down to talk about some things together. And it was very memorable, that meeting.
I totally agree with that as well. It's still in my mind right now. How can we actually meet up on the same day spontaneously? And the thing is, we actually discussed a lot of things. That was the moment where we see like, hey, we Malaysian actually kind of united at that moment to come together, that drive for missions and visions that we want to do something for the very first time. I think this is a historical moment, if I have to say that. It's a truly historical moment for the ABA field in Malaysia. So where we're going to sit down and boom, we have a logo, we have a name, we have, registrations. Let's start and go from there.
we got
Yeah.
into work pretty quickly. But I also, to add on, I think prior to 2016, the ABA practices who brought in, actually in Malaysia, it's been about 20 years since ABA has been introduced to Malaysia.
Okay.
But prior to the awareness of certification, actually who brought in ABA to Malaysia are actually parents with children with autism. So there are a couple of parents who actually didn't know what to do at that time with the little knowledge and accessibility of knowledge at that time. I know of a couple of parents who then flew to US to get training on ABA.
Wow.
Well, not certification pathways, but they got some training, say ABA, and actually came back. And for the benefit of their children, and they thought, I also want to share this knowledge with other parents, and then, open some form of clinic setting for other children as well, other families as well. There's also psychologists from Malaysia who went over to the US and learned about ABA and also established ABA centers, ABA clinics, we call it center over here. And the growth of these clinics or these centers actually also prior to the awareness of certification pathways have contributed to a lot of ABA practitioners, training practitioners in Malaysia. And of course, with more awareness of the certification pathways from BACB, when these people, when Hong and Sian and Ling came back, they were the pioneers who brought awareness about certification back to Malaysia. That's when we are able to see a clearer pathway to provide a little bit more structure and accessibility of services and quality services to the families here in Malaysia.
So you've had your round table of 12, and you've got your logo, you've got your list of folks. You're going to start inviting folks. What were some of the early aims of MABA when you first started out?
Well, the initial meetings that we come across together as a roundtable, we all agree that there's a need for us to step in and do something about how we can grow the community here. How can we make sure that consumers are being protected in Malaysia? And how do we set the standards? I think this is the most important, because we do have like freelancers, we have people practicing different ways of doing as well. So I think the question here is, what is the right directions for MABA? Like, what do we do here? Like, what do we serve as a role here? And how do we want to achieve as MABA? How do we get there? How, when to achieve? What is the timeline? How to achieve? And how to build a team to drive that? Because if essentially this is a voluntary work, it's not paid job or something that we can get someone full time to do about it. Yeah, I think that's where we focus on building those things. And MABA initially focus on three things, where we focus on disseminations of the science itself, because we realize that the community needs to be aware of what is the science of AB in the first place before we actually introduce, hey, MABA is here. And then the second thing is we also focus on building up the national standards and also the ethical competency as well. Because if we really want people to practice to a certain standard, then we need to have our very own standards that align with the Malaysia cultural practice and also the local. Yeah. And lastly, also is the certifications, of course, because we really want to build up the certified people so that, one, we encourage a professional growth in the local country. And secondly, it's also sort of a recognition for the consumers to understand where they can reach out to, who are the certified people that I can reach out for right services. So that's why these are the three main goals that MABA was working on in the first place. Yeah.
And so this is 2019. So you're preparing for the BACB's announcement that they'll be stopping certification of folks come 2022, and so was the creation of a sort of a national certification something that was front of mind early on for you?
Yeah. So at the very early stage, we back in 2020, so we set a goal that we want to make sure that Malaysia will have their very own national standards and competency before the transitions end. So which is starting from 2028, right? So we set a goal that we want to set up the national standards by end of 2020. And we are so grateful that we actually able to gather all the professions and even Malaysians from Malaysian BCBA from different countries, some from the UK, from Australia. They bring in all the expertise and the local BCBs as well. We all work together as Malaysians, regardless where we were. They are very good in what they are doing, and they are able to develop standards by 2022. Of course, throughout the process, we have been, reaching out to a lot of people to, find out the resources, where to begin, how do we actually develop the standards in the first place, how do we make sure the process are actually valid and reliable as well. So we did a lot of SME, so subject matter experts. We have a different rounds of evaluations. So, we even talked to Dr. Michelle Kelly from UAE as well, because they also have gone through the process of setting up the national standards and occupational standards as well. So that's why we wanted to actually reach out and see what kind of thing that we can adapt. We actually did a lot of research on the process, and we didn't like completely follow every single process, but we adapt it in Malaysia culture because we also want to make sure that the process is actually, uh, suitable for us, the way how we do things here.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
And that's something I noticed just even looking at your profiles on LinkedIn with the MCBA letters. Tell me what that stands for, and when did folks first start getting that certification as part of their title? It must have been a proud moment.
Yeah. So in 2023, we are officially have our national standards. The first goal here is, while Alexa will talk about the examination part later on.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal here is to develop our local talents in the future, so that the next generations always have a chance where they can grow their professions and working all the way up to become a certified behavior analyst. So the first step was to grandfathering all the existing certificates, like the BCBAs, the BCABAs, and also the RPT. So that was our first step. And after that, we want to breach in the standards to the local standards, where we want to set up our local examination. So Alexa can talk a little bit more about the examination process, because she's the one who's spearheading the entire project here. So I'll leave that to her, and she can talk about that. But yeah, it's essentially is the goal here is to become sustainable local talents for
Yeah.
the future of behavior analysts in Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So essentially, the MCBA stands for Malaysia Certified Behaviour Analyst. So this is a master's level. This is a master's level certification, and yeah. So following that logic and that pathway, and we've signed the memorandum of an understanding with the first university who worked with MABAS and with university on establishing that coursework, and with the like for us like Hong mentioned, it's the grandfathering of people who are already certified with BCBA titles and BCABA titles. But we also wish to have our own standard. And with the scope of competency national standards developed, and now that we have the master's coursework established with one university over here, then we are now finalizing the last step of the MCBA board exam, which would be the first inaugural batch from the university to be sitting for the exam. So they will be the first batch to have that title, like homegrown MCBA in Malaysia. So that would happen this year and next year. So I think it's just moving pieces all working together to establish that. And I think there's a lot of workings behind establishing this board exam at the MCBA level, and much work is needed to be done with the other certification level as well, like the MCABA and the MCBT. And all these are supported by our subject matter experts. And also that we're working with a psychometrician company that helps us establish this, with also international consultants to give us advice on whether we're on the right pathway. But like Hong mentioned earlier, we do take in, advices from international collaborators. Then we also, Hong, we probably can mention that back in 2021, when we're setting up the standards, we also spoke to our community, who are the stakeholders, like companies who hire ABA practitioners or parents who hire ABA practitioners, and also practitioners who are credentialed and practitioners who are not credentialed, and also have a summit to gauge their awareness and to gauge what they think about the importance of having these standards and having these pathways established in Malaysia. And I think our results were very consistent with like everybody from all these different categories think that there's a need to have our own certification pathways. Practitioners say that they want very clear career progression pathways because prior to the awareness of, like, for example, a very starking example is the differentiation between the job scope of a behavior tech and a behavior analyst, right? So prior to all these conversations, the understanding is always that I'm just going to be a behavior therapist for the rest of my life, right? And I also sometimes do analytic work, but I also do, so prior to this, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and people just like, oh, okay, what is the MCBT? It's just like, what is the RBT and what is the BCBA? What's the different job scope? And then with that, those conversations happening while we were establishing these national standard of competence and ethical guidelines is a lot clearer. And then people are like, we definitely need different kinds of trainings for different kinds of job scope. Yeah. So it was very clear to us back then, these things needs to go into working. And then we've now established the MCBA certification pathways that's a bit clearer. And then much work needs to be done with the other job scope.
This is very impressive. I've had the opportunity to interview behavior analysts in over 50 countries now, and hearing stories about how the field is starting up in these countries and sort of the different pathways folks are taking. Like, you folks were on it right away and made incredible progress in a really short amount of time. There are other countries there are a few countries that are, I think, closer to national certification. A couple others have started. The UK and Australia are sort of obvious examples. How did you do this so fast? I think is part of the question, and are you it seems like you're a model for other countries. It seems like a lot of other countries have gone. I'm curious why you didn't go the other route that I've seen a lot of countries have gone, which I don't see as a problem, but just a different route of seeking out some of these international certifications like the QABA or the IBAO and sort of going that direction, and then maybe taking more time to develop a credential. Like, you folks went right to it, and it sounds like you've done a great job. You're into, you're looking at accreditation and the psychometrics, and it sounds like you've got a really good team. You're already in a university. I mean, the speed at which you folks have developed this is incredible.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. I think I'll just add a little bit more of that context. Listen, first, we are not alone. We don't do this alone. And I think the biggest factor is that we are united. The unity of colleagues coming all together at the same time, working for the same thing, it speeds up a lot of process. And when we don't do one thing at a time, we kind of like do things parallelly as well. I think the biggest thing of all is that, again, while we are doing things parallelly, we also seek for support from overseas internationals. From the UK SBA, we ask for what is the advice, how do you set things up, is the process correct? We verify the process. We don't, because in the end of the day, we don't know where to start. We don't know where to go. And, our goal here is that we need to start something for our community. And eventually we kind of steer the directions as we go, redefine every single phases that we have gone through, and so that we have a clearer goal. And then ultimately now we have a very clear goal that we want to be national licensing by the government. So this is something that we want to go later on. And Alexa can touch base a little bit more about the work there. But yeah, we are not alone. And We do have support from BACB, to be honest, from in terms of guidance and certain support from Dr. Neil Martin as well.
Hmm.
We also have support from UAE, Dr. Michelle Kelly and Dr. Irene. We talk to them a lot, and they actually are very kind enough to share their resources to
Hmm.
us without anything. They share everything. They give their time, efforts, and they share their resources to us. So yeah, we are able to do this in a very short amount of time. It's thanks to everyone coming all together at the same time. Lastly, the university, they started, their own program there and it run concurrently. So we kind of like divide and conquer kind of thing, and that works a lot
Hmm.
for
Yeah,
us at that point of time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, thank you, Ben. We're very honored to. I think we didn't know that we were models for a lot of a lot of
Hmm.
countries, but I think it's not perfect, but it's it can be kind of messy. But I think we're quite blessed that a lot of our practitioners really do. Like we didn't do this alone.
Hmm.
We have meetings while we have dinner every week. And we're just very blessed with the how united the practitioners in Malaysia are,
Yeah.
and also Malaysians, like I think Hong mentioned, Malaysians from over who are practicing overseas. They are also very generous to shed light what happens in other countries, and also practitioners like Dr. Michelle Kelly, Dr. Neil Martin also guide us along the way, but also the university coursework. Just a trivial fact that the conversation started with Dr. Neil Martin, Dr. Will Peward, and also a very prominent clinical psychologist faculty in Sunway University. His name is Professor Alvin. So the three of them met and talked about it, and we that was at the time where MABA was still creating the scope of competency, the national standards.
Hmm.
So that was the parallel that was working on. So it's kind of both are together. So Sunway University did start the development work of the coursework really early on without a standard of competency. But before the launch, then the competency is done, and then it's being mapped to the university coursework. So I guess I think that contributes to like what you mentioned, the speed of how things are getting established. Yeah, but it's not perfect, but we're working on it, and I think we're just very blessed with like a lot of committed people working on this together.
Yep. I totally agree.
And tell me, and Alexa Hong was alluding to you on this point. Tell me a little bit more about. So you've got a great core group of Malaysian behavior analysts, both in country and around the world, supporting you. You've got support from other credentialing boards around the world. You've got the parallel work happening at Sunway University and all the good stuff there. This is a national accreditation. Tell me a little bit about sort of. I'm not sure what the right word is here, but sort of the acceptance, I guess, by kind of the Malaysian system. What does funding look like for ABA services in Malaysia? Kind of that piece.
Yeah. So the acceptance, maybe I can speak about how one of the enrollment rates for the Masters of ABA in this coursework that we're in. It's actually a very steady trend that we kind of have to screen out and be selective first, because one of the challenges is we need to be aware of the availability of competent supervisors to be supervising these
Yes.
who are in training. Yeah. So, but the numbers are telling us that there's a great need, right? However, this is a private university, and when we're talking about fundings for services and funding for trainings, right now we are pretty much private running field, but with the work that we're trying to work with the government and get our profession to be licensed in the allied health, hopefully that will happen pretty soon, this couple of years. And I'll see to that. Hopefully that brings a lot more awareness from the government. And we do recognize the need that's one of the challenge that we are facing, and we're trying to also educate more, because a lot of services and practice are very focused in the city, like Kuala Lumpur, the Klang Valley. We call it the Klang Valley. That's part of the outreach the dissemination that Hong mentioned, that MABA is also part of the mission of MABA to reach different states, the rural areas, where they will require different language adaptation to knowledge that we're disseminating. So that's when we will need the government to step in. Right now, there's no insurance fundings for services. There are some, they're starting to, some companies, but they fund autism therapy. They fund early intervention. So ABA, the question of where does ABA fit in early intervention, that is a question. And a lot of awareness work still needs to be done with the public sector. I know some families, they got, because some ABA practices are being parked under the registration of early intervention, and they get some kind of funding from there. But that's a start, but that's basically the landscape here regarding funding
Yeah.
in Malaysia for services and for training.
Yeah, and just to add on a little bit what Alex was saying. So one of the reasons why when we shift our initial directions from being a certification body in Malaysia for MABA towards a licensure is because we see the needs of practitioners require fully recognized by the government to support more wider spread of populations like what Alex was saying. And ultimately, the goal here as well is, if you look at different countries like UAE, you look at US specifically as well, and also UK as well, you will see that the insurance are more likely to come in and fund if there is a state licensure. And that brings in more support for the local community where they can actually get funding from the right insurance. And right now, we as we're speaking right now, there are many communities that still cannot receive ABA because they just couldn't afford the service. So I think with that, ultimate goal, having a license and insurance to come in and fund the local practices, it will help to do, outreach to more communities and families who require support. Yeah.
And is work being done sort of maybe through other avenues to support folks in kind of the rural, low resource areas? I've seen this is a few years back, but I had a researcher, James Lee, on the podcast, and he was doing a lot of work around these sort of cascading kind of pyramidal type interventions in low resource areas, and he was doing work in Mongolia and Korea and Peru, and sort of trying to bring services and kind of a more of a parent coaching model and those sorts of things to bring some skills to parents. Is any of that work being done?
Yes, definitely. Some of the providers, they started off as direct service providers, but also recognizing the needs. So, for example, I know of a few who is starting to branch out to and actually fly into rural area every quarter to bring some trainings, not only for parents, also for teachers as well, and different kinds of teachers like special education teachers. There are also general education teachers who are asking for these kind of training. But we also recognize that it is not like a one-off training, because it has to be a skill-based training. And it's when we talk about skill-based training, there has to be follow-up, supervision. So there has been work done where it's hybrid. So initial phases, we go in to do a face-to-face training, getting to know the organization and tailoring the training needs to how this organization has been providing services for these families and children. And if it's an education setting, how are these teachers? How does this training work for them? Because teachers are teachers, right? They have other responsibilities as well. So, so this is more of the logistical kind of barriers. And then we have to come back and then remote follow up with like very closely remote kind of supervision, and then have a good schedule to go in for check-ins again for follow-up training. So it's pretty much a very tailored kind of training, but with the aim to disseminate the knowledge through real actions and through skill-based kind of training. Yeah, so yeah, that has been work done. Definitely needs to be more. I think personally there can be more, but I think there's also a domino effect. Like when this work is being done with one place with people who really enthusiastically want to learn and want follow-ups, and that actually spread words to people in that community, and then we're starting to see more ask for these kind of trainings. Yeah. And also, interestingly, when I'm in university training the master's students, they are also students from other states. So they're willing to come here for 1 or 2 years because the coursework is done in person. But I'm also very happy to hear that they are interested to go back to their states to continue the work of dissemination, either through service provision or through trainings. So I think in the next 5 years, I think we're going to see more and more knowledge being spread to the rural areas through these two kinds of avenues.
Just some of the language states and whatnot that you're using. Can you folks paint a little picture for folks listening about Malaysia, sort of maybe starting with a bit of the geography? Like, where is Malaysia exactly? How big is it? How big is it? You say you have states. It's big enough to have states. So, how many states are there? And tell me a little bit about sort of the sort of Malaysia as a country, and maybe you can also then speak to, because Hong, you spoke several times. You referred to the importance of incorporating Malaysian culture into the credential and into the accreditation. So I'd love to hear more about sort of that piece. So a little bit about the culture and just, where to find it on Google Maps.
Okay. Yeah. I always tell people who ask me, where's Malaysia? Even though I kind of like pointing in the map. So the easiest way to locate where is Malaysia is, do you know Thailand? Do you know Singapore? We're in between.
We're in between.
We're in between. And we do have another island just right next to us as well. So we got East and West Malaysia. So we're just right there. So very, very strategically located. Talk about adapting Malaysia culture. Let's sort of talk a little bit more about different things. But from my perspective is that when we do the standard, we recognize that the signs are very universal. Like the way how we practice the behavior analysis are pretty much the same. What makes us different is the way how we practice. And we have to take things into account, such as our standard committee team that developing the standards. They take into account that a few things such as Malaysian law, because we have this anti-corruption law that we have to take into account when we put into the ethical standards and everything. We also have to take into a culture where, our family here are very welcoming. Sometimes if they offer you a water, will you take it or not? That's just yes. Like we pretty much need to take this like a little bit more flexible. Because we want to build a good relationship with the family so that we can deliver the right services and all this. So yes, these are the things that we take into account. And yeah, and of course the languages as well. So maybe Alex, I can talk a little more about that.
Yeah, geographically, I think maybe more people will be familiar with Thailand and Singapore, but we're right between. But what's unique is that's East Malaysia and West Malaysia. So in between there's an ocean. So we do need to, if we want to go to East Malaysia, we need to take a flight. We do have states.
The second secret word is beach.
13 states, I think.
Yeah.
This is testing my geographical knowledge. Yeah. But it's very interesting. Ben, you should come visit. I don't know how to say it, not sure, but we're very multicultural. So when it comes to things like language, right, there's no clear cut. Like, this is a question that we always ask, and we're being asked, like, should we use English when we're doing training? And the answer is very interesting. The answer is not always straightforward and say, these are the Malay speaking or these are the Chinese speaking. Well, because we're made up of 3 major ethnicity. So the Chinese, the Malay, and the Indians, and also the Aborigines in Malaysia. But with our education, the emphasis has always been English and Malay, bilingual. So we're multilingual culture. We're multilingual. So when we do training, it's always advised that you can do it in English and then you insert some Malay during your delivery. Or if we're speaking to a more Chinese speaking community, we will go, you can speak in Chinese, but then it's also okay to put in some English because some words you just don't have a lot of Chinese jargons to it, right? And if you use a lot of jargons, the layman wouldn't be able to understand anyway. So we do need to explain things in the layman language anyway. And the way we speak is what we call rojak. So in a sentence, when we're speaking colloquially in a sentence, we might mix English and Malay or English and some variation of Mandarin language. So when it comes to delivery of training to the people in the community, we really don't have a straight language, but it's always, people generally understand English, but during delivery, we do need to sometimes have a certain percentage of Malay and English. When it comes to providing services, now it comes down to the family preferences. So some families would state that they are majority a Chinese-speaking family because the grandmother speaks Chinese, speaks Mandarin, their relative speaks Mandarin to the child, family, the main language is Mandarin, and then they would say, could you provide the service in Mandarin? And we would do so. And the same with Malay. But then again, it's not 100% because when the kids go to school, they do speak Malay and English as well. So when it comes to cultural adaptation, this is the main thing that I think we're quite unique compared to the other countries where there's always a fixed language to use. Whereas for us, and we've come to also be very used to when we're developing training materials or even service materials, we just do it in 3 languages because we know down the road there will be needs to being translated and that sort of thing. So so interchanging of language during delivery is one of the unique way. And sometimes when we work with maybe the older generation, like the grandparents, we do need to use some dialects as well because they're descendants from other countries. Yeah, but the main language, we do need to interchange very flexibly, which is something that we're quite used to doing anyway. And even when we select who to provide these trainings and who to go into the services, for example, Hong and I, we are English Mandarin, right? Right, Hong? I think we're English Mandarin heavy. Malay, we can speak. Malay is our national language. We do need to go through, it's compulsory subject throughout our education, our formal education in Malaysia. We can speak, we can understand, we can write, but we might not be so fluent when it comes to a full-fledged delivery of training in Malay. But we do have colleagues who are of Malay descendants or Malay race, the race of Malay, and they are also Muslims. So we do have encounters where families say, can you teach some religious, like using task analysis to teach my child to do the prayers, right? And then we do need to recruit then our Malay colleagues who are proficient in that area, in that language, and they are available and they are also part of our ABA community, and we sort of just work together this way. Yeah. And this is generally how we leverage on each other's.
What about the? I want to come back to this because this is really interesting, and I'm going to tangent a bit in a second. What about the exam for the MCBA? What language is that in, or is it?
It's going to be in English.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So and that's very on par with a lot of our university coursework, not only ABA, like generally in our universities, public and private universities, English still remains as the one of the main language, if not Malay. So in private universities, it's all done in English. Yeah. So English is still,
So curious, the languages I find are always fascinating, and I've had a lot of conversations with folks from indigenous communities, and so I'm interested, and I'm sure I could Google this, but I'd love to hear from you folks a bit about sort of that history. So Malay is the national language. Is Malay sort of the indigenous language to Malaysia? Was that sort of the original folks that were there? Like you talk about folks being Mandarin, a lot of Chinese, the other language as well. What's sort of what's the reason for such a mix, and B, why Malay the national language? What's the story there?
Wow, this
This
goes
is
kind of
Malaysia history.
our Malaysian history is very interesting. I'll have to say that. I think it goes back to hundreds of years ago, like
Hmm.
uh, one one four something. Yeah. So where we have back then Malaysia is like a country with indigenous people, and then we have people coming from Indonesia migrate to, let's say, to Malaysia, and now they're like the first people who developed the countries here. So then later on we have British colonials and and all this. So they bring in different migrants from China and India. That makes us like very rich, multiracial. We are blessed actually in this way. We're very happy to be born in Malaysia that we have so multiracial, and yet we are able to live harmony together and blending like Alexa saying, using what we call roja means you mix and match different languages in one way, and we are still able to understand. Just for example, say la, like different tone of la la la, it makes a lot of different kind of meaning, so it's very interesting to see that how we can still communicate with in a very effective way, despite we don't like speak the full sentences in one specific language. So that's how Malaysia like kind of grew up over the few hundreds years, and built kind of culture here. We have, but having said that, one of the reason why we actually built the standards and also examinations in English is because we want to be very mindful about the translations, the way how we kind of disseminate the science. So that's why we have made the decisions to stay with English, and hopefully, in the future, we still open the opportunity to translate the Bahasa, which is our local national language here, and with the right tone, with the right kind of language, but this is something that in the future project. But right now, the reason why we don't change that is because we want to make sure the science are being taught in the right way and the terminology is being used in the right way as well. So
Back to Ben. To add on, I think even with the indigenous communities, they do go through the same national education, and the national education is standardized to learn Malay and English. So for those of them who are privileged to be able to get education, formal education, will be able to understand Malay and English. Why Malay as the national language? I think that's the historical context of it's from Indonesia, like we're a land of settlers. I think we can say that, land of settlers, and with the British colonies bringing in migrants, and then like our grandfathers are from China, right? Like settled down here, but the standardization of the national education has been that way. But for the indigenous communities, they do have their own language, and there are many of them. Many of them, but because of the national education, we do have a common language to be shared on, and I think in English is also still one of the main languages being used.
That's awesome. Something you alluded to earlier, Hong, when you were sort of talking about some of the early visions of MABA and some of the hopes for MABA, in addition to accreditation, certification, and sort of bringing folks together. You also alluded to conferences. So tell me a little bit about that. Has MABA had conferences? How many? What have they been like? And tell me a little bit about that progression, and then also what if so, what the most recent one was like.
okay, thanks, Van, for reading out. Back in 2020, we laid out as we grow MABA towards 2023. I sat down together with my committees and we kind of lay out some blueprint here, like where we want to go, what should we do to disseminate the science. Conferences was one of the objectives, but we couldn't do that during the time, because our focus here back then was to build our infrastructure for MABA. Because we started out with zero resources, we don't have money, we don't have, but we are blessed because we have a lot of people coming in to help us to build those infrastructure. So our focus for the first 3 to 4 years is about building infrastructure, national standards, building the community in here. And Alexa was the one who take the lead to build up the Malaysia conferences in 2015, right? 2025, sorry.
That
In
was
20,
last year.
that was last year. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and uh, prior to that as well, we do have one conference that's organized by
Yeah.
Ling, which is the first BCBA practice in Malaysia, and she was the one who started up the conference to kind of grow the interest there. I think that in 2025 that kind of take over the momentum, and kind of like, hey, we are back, like the community is back, let's come in, let's continue to build the momentum for the conferences, and build the disseminations of the science as well. So maybe Alexa can talk a little bit more about the conference process, and I think this will be very interesting to know as well.
Yeah, I think speaking about conferences, I think the first one was really back in 2018, I believe. That was prior to the formation of MABA, but it was spearheaded by Ling, the first BCBA. I think that was the first time international speakers have been flown into Malaysia, and the Malaysian practitioners had the chance to actually meet and actually discuss and come together and discuss about ABA. And then we've also had a chance to speak to our colleagues from Southeast Asia. So the first Southeast Asia conference happened in Bali 2024. So MABA also participated in that organization. And then in 2025, MABA had the first MABA organized conference together with Sunway University. So, and that intention is really to, number one, disseminate updated ABA knowledge to the community. And number two is also to bring awareness to the presence of MABA to the community, to educate people about what we're trying to do and bring more awareness to better practices of ABA. And that conference, we intentionally also invited people of the other allied health disciplines. So not only for the ABA practitioners, we also invited people like pediatricians, speech and language pathologists, clinical psychologists, occupational therapists, general teachers and special education teachers. And there were special invitations as well. And we also got a speaker from the Social and Justice Department from the government of Malaysia to really to continue on with and to let people, because we've got a lot of work done, and now's the time to bring awareness to all this work done, and also continuing to update our knowledge from the development of ABA practices from all around the world. So that was really the aim of the conference for Malaysia last year. As really to bringing the community together, making friends with other professions, so that we oftentimes work with these allied health professions, but I think we rarely have the opportunity to deeply understand each other's philosophical underpinnings. How do we practice? What do we actually do? Or are there overlaps? Or do we have specialties in each area? Of course we do, but they really now have a better understanding of like what ABA does, and hopefully also help us rally for this profession in the country as well. Within that conference, we also had some closer meetings with government officials and also other universities, public universities, to kind of open up the conversation about, hey, we've got one model coursework, like, would you be interested to having more courses in different kinds of universities? So that was also being discussed. And just really, I think, bringing a lot of dissemination, different kinds of dissemination, not only ABA knowledge, but also the professionalization of our field to another level. So I think that was that. And then our colleagues in other countries are also trying to do that in their own countries. And we're actively participating in the Southeast Asia conference as well. And the second one's going to happen in April this year. very soon in regards to conferences. We ride on this momentum. So we kind of work together with the Southeast Asia community because we do believe that having more resources together will help all of our countries go a little bit faster. But also recognizing that each countries have our own unique barriers and unique local laws and local issues to navigate. So therefore, we will come together once in 2 years, and then we will also have some space to work on our own countries, interspersing like that. That would be good momentum for each country to grow together.
There's this, you kind of alluded to this in the beginning, the sort of, and I don't know if it's maybe just something that's in your genes, but it's just sort of organized, efficient collaboration among colleagues that's now sort of expanding to colleagues in other fields, colleagues in other countries. I see this with, sort of that conference. I mean, you could have just had, a good old-fashioned ABA conference with just a bunch of MCBAs coming and talking, and it would have been a great thing. But you made it about bringing in other professions. You made it about bringing in government. You made it about connecting people to the university. You're doing all these sort of parallel activities all the time. It's sort of become your nature in the way you're approaching things and kind of connecting all the dots all the time. I love the connecting with the other countries. I mean, you may have noticed my eyes kind of glancing back and forth. I've been staring at the Google Maps of Malaysia here and sort of just looking at how close all these, I had no idea how close all these Southeast Asian countries were: Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, and others that are involved in this conference. It's a great sight to see. I love just sort of this whole approach. Tell me a little bit more about, and the other piece I think you alluded to, Alexa, was that Sunway is not only the first, but maybe the only university potentially in Southeast Asia providing, a behavior analysis course sequence. Are you finding folks from some of these other countries wanting to come to Sunway?
Yes.
Yeah.
So recently, the first cohort, because it's the inaugural cohort, so we limited it to Malaysians only, but we do get applications. And the third cohort, which is we're accepting and starting in May this year, we are starting to accept international applicants as well. So we've got applicants from Philippines, Indonesia, and we've got Indonesian clinics sponsoring their practitioners to come to the university.
Incredible.
It is the first master's level. So in Indonesia and Philippines, they are establishing their own training sequence. But like I mentioned earlier, different countries are navigating different structures. So for the master's level, we do get, and we also got people from Maldives, people from other countries applying to the master's coursework. Yeah.
I think to add on, I think, currently, as far as we understood as well, the Southeast Asia is pretty small community right now, and our community is, the practitioners all around these regions are very limited. From what we understood is that our colleagues is also in the process of building a university, and Sunway kind of set the, they kind of set the standard here. They were leading the directions here. So yes, hopefully in the near future, we are looking at potentially more and more universities in these regions, in the Southeast Asia regions, and the career growth in this region will be significant increase as well. So this is something that we are looking at in the next 5 years, hopefully.
Yeah. And we're also looking at tendening each other's strengths and weaknesses and come together for better governance. So even though each country are setting up their own standards and training pathways, the governance piece also needs to be talked about. And if Malaysia need to be governing the 25 of us, the objectivity and, where does that come from? So we're also studying this question and posing this question with our Southeast Asian colleagues and trying to navigate and see how we can collaborate with each other because our numbers are small in each country. So once training pathways and standards are being built, then the governance piece. How do we govern different standards and different competence, and that is also something that's in work, right? Huh?
Yeah. So yeah, that's the very interesting piece. Yeah, but and on top of that, sharing resources among this region is very crucial at this moment to make sure that every countries, because not all countries we are like different starting line here, so we kind of want to help each other so that we can build that. And whatever that we have done, whatever failure and success that we have gone through past COVID time while we're building this MABA as well, I think we are happy to share out, we're happy to, collaborate as well. And hopefully, like Alexa said, we are still not perfect yet. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And hopefully MABA will continue to improve for the next few years as well.
So tell me a little bit more about the Southeast Asia ABA conference and kind of what was sort of maybe the impetus for starting that. When did that start? And tell me just a little bit more about.
Yeah. So we started in 2023 when Christy, who is she was a president of ePuppy in Indonesia. So she reached out to us, me and Catherine from Philippines, where we say, like let's do something together because we are very small, and Dr. Neil Martin was always encouraging, all of us to why not Southeast Asia do something together? Start from somewhere, start, doing things together, and you will be able to see how you guys can collaborate and work something out. So Christy reached out and we kind of like sat down and say, hey, let's talk together and see what we can do to organize. So then four of us, Alexa, Catherine, and Christy, and myself, is that we sat down, why not we do a conference, right? So and Christy kind of lead the first conference in Bali in 2024, and it turned out it was a success, and we kind of proud that hey, finally we do things together. It kind of shows that even though we come from different countries with different culture, uh, we are able to do this, So that leads to the second conference in Cebu, upcoming in the April 11th and 12th. That will be our second conference, and we want to kind of build things there. And hopefully in the future, we will be able to work something out across these regions as, as as an association, um, the breach between standards of different countries, ultimately Korea as well, where people can just move different countries and there was no issue or limitation. Just because you are MABA doesn't mean that you cannot practice somewhere else. And that kind of limits you to work, So that's something in the future where I hope that we can build that across the Southeast Asia region.
And
So-
also,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. And also, we're hoping to start more research activities in this region because we do recognize that research is the way to grow the community, and a lot of research is being done in other parts of the world, but rarely, I think. Not a lot is being done in Southeast Asia, and also we are going to leverage on each other to hope for more research activities to be happening in Southeast Asia through these Southeast Asia organization as well.
And who's this conference for? Who should attend, and why should they attend the Southeast Asia ABA conference?
Well, I think from my perspective, I think the Southeast Asia conference, we primarily targeting for Southeast Asia region people because that's the fastest way to disseminate and reach out to the community here. Because previously we talked about the challenges, like how do people know about ABA? And it's still pretty new in this region, by the way, and not a lot of communities that knows or understand what is applied behavior analysis or even behavior analysis as well. So I think the most targeting audience are actually Southeast Asia regions, but we also inviting people from internationals or Southeast Asia uh, country resident citizens who is working overseas all around the world. spread the words and say, hey, this region is doing something now. So come and have a look and see what you can bring in to support and contribute as well. So yeah.
And is the conference entirely in person?
For this
Yes,
conference.
it's entirely in person because we do want a lot of networking to happen because we're still really young. We believe that having more in-person chats and informal chats during the conference will really so we wanted to start off as an in-person event first.
Yeah. Speaking of conference, I had an experience with attending conference in the UK. One of the best thing ever is to be able to meet in person. Gives you a lot more engagement and with a sense of stimulation. I think stimulation is the right word. Like we really do need the active stimulations. Well, the hybrid does work, but it's just that it's not as good as face to face. So yeah.
And so, where can folks go and learn more about the conference and register and all that sort of thing?
So as the first one was, so we kind of, maybe we hope to
Yeah,
meet
that'd be
in
lovely.
person.
That'd be lovely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So go.
That's the one of the reasons why we can't see ABA, because most likely every of the conferences will be viewed by the beach.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's wonderful. Just kind of reflecting back here and thinking about all of the good collaboration and all of the sort of resources and connections that you made globally to sort of make this happen. A lot of my listeners are in countries that are a lot earlier in this process. I've interviewed several folks where they're literally the only behavior analyst in the country, and they're really just getting started out. In fact, I interviewed one person in Slovenia, and she's not even certified as a behavior analyst yet, but she's the only one sort of practicing in the country. And so, what advice do you give to behavior analysts trying to grow the fields in countries where ABA is still emerging?
Okay, maybe I can start. It's never easy to grow professions because it requires a tremendous uh, proactive community
Hmm.
and government supports and many different angles as well. I think if let's say for countries who, and again, sorry, I just want to take back a little bit, but the way how MABA is starting out is just favorable to us in the way how we start out. It does not mean the way it should be the same for different countries. The pathway on how you want to set up uh the fractions, the certifications, the body and associations is different across different countries. If let's say the examples that you given earlier, for our colleagues who the only one who's practicing in the country, I think probably the best thing we could start is to get herself certified and then start to disseminate through providing coursework, trainings, because the more people getting trained, the more community you're growing, and that's where you can start to grow community and then associations, and then followed by the rest of the things. So I think the starting line for each country is kind of different here. So it depends on what is the need here first and what is the directions of the countries that they want to go. Yeah.
Third secret word is brilliant.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the training can happen in different forms. So I think for practitioners who are very small in numbers, the first thing to do is disseminate ABA to the communities through practices and community trainings. And it doesn't have to look like the certification kind of training, but like ABA knowledge and bites and pieces that people can actually see the impact of ABA being influenced in their everyday life. And I think so last year we went to Nepal, and there's also only one BCBA in the whole of Nepal, but they through but Pragya. Her name is Pragya, and she have then brought in. She organized a conference and brought in international people to speak to her community, and through that, that also helped her community. Have a bit of more awareness about ABA. And also, interestingly, in that conference, I saw some similarities in how the Malaysia conference was being done in a way that a lot of different professions came to the conference, indicating that they are curious about ABA. They've kind of heard of it, have a very surface knowledge from the internet about it. And when they joined the conference, they were inspired. And then there were questions about, okay, now where do I get a formal training, right? And then I think that's a really good start to get people some fundamental knowledge. And then, like Hong said, then the ball can get rolling and you have a community to work with. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I was just talking to the only behavior analyst in just this morning in Ethiopia, and she was talking about how she was heading off to an African conference on autism, and I think that's sort of another direction folks can go. Is a lot of folks are interested in autism and interested in learning about autism, and you can host an autism conference, and that's a great way to sort of invite professionals from all different scopes and then really kind of show your product there.
Yeah. And they might be surprised that, there might be another Ethiopian that are residing in different countries that happen just like Hans, we never know about Han was already residing in the US, and we can connect with Han and say, hey, you were actually Malaysians and then you moved to US, but yeah. Get connected. I think the conference is a good platform to begin with, get connected with people. And I think, that's amazing to see how people actually get connected from there.
If someone listening wanted to get involved or learn more about ABA in Malaysia, where can they find out more?
So they can also go to our website, m-aba.com. That's MABA, but you can also we're more active on social media like Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. Malaysia Association of Behaviour Analysis, MABA. Just type in MABA, you will be able to reach us. And email us or reach us through the social media platforms. We will respond and connect from there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Hong, Alexa, fascinating discussion today. It was great learning about Malaysia and all the great work you folks are doing. It's early days. I can't imagine what Malaysia and Southeast Asia ABA will be like in the next 5 or 10 years. You're doing incredible work, and thanks for coming on and sharing the story.
Thanks, man, for inviting us. Yeah, it was an honor to have you.
The honor was mine. Thanks, folks. Check out these episodes of Behaviour Speak. Episode 241, Behavior Analysis in the Philippines. Episode 211, the Florida Child Welfare Behavior Analysis Services Program with Hand Go. And episode 188, Incorporating Filipino Values in Behavioral Health with Dr. Pauline Tolentino-Pablo. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok and subscribe to our YouTube page at Behaviour Speak. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.